talking about my work experience and what have I achieved or not achieved, I thought let me share with the audience today my relationship with data and how it's evolved over years. I think the first thing I've heard a lot of my leadership and especially business leaders talk about is in God we trust, all others bring data. I've learned it very early in my career that if I have to, as an HR professional, enjoy a voice in the room, if I'm able to speak with numbers and data, there's going to be respect for that. If we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. So I think, again, because I said that I've learned it from business leaders, generally in a meeting room, if I don't go with data, then I'm assuming everybody understands this word hippo came quite fashionable at a point in time, which is the highest paid person's opinion. So if I don't have data, the senior most person in the room tends to call the shots without knowing the right or wrong of the data or having full knowledge. And therefore I would say I would rather go with data than let the hippo in the room rule. There are two sources of error. Either you lack sufficient data or you fail to take advantage of the data you have. I would say I would rather fail to take advantage of the data that you have. So, which means I'm okay to live with insufficient data. Ideally, we must have sufficient data because garbage in is garbage out, etc. But irrespective of what the quality or the quantity of the data that you have, still, whatever data you have, learn to take advantage of that data is what I have learned. Of course, the trust in the data has to be established over a period of time, but for the business to start looking at people decisions from that lens, while of course using their gut becomes important, and we have to ensure that the business starts doing it. We all know this. What gets measured gets managed. I think all these quotes, all of us have learned over years. I have learned it, and this has become my mantra over years that if I'm not talking about some of the key metrics, the KPIs that matter to me as an HR professional, nobody else is going to talk about it. If I don't talk about compa ratios, if I don't talk about attrition numbers, if I don't talk about predictive analytics, it's predictive attrition models, etc., nobody else in the room will. So it is my primary onus to ensure that my KPIs are clearly called out, my HR dashboard is clearly called out, and all conversation is happening around it so that the future is brighter than where we are today. And of course, I don't think that my numbers and data make sense enough for people in the room unless I'm able to visualize that and unless I'm able to tell a story around that. And I will talk about it in my slides ahead. But just taking a boring, flat data in the room holds no meaning unless there's a story attached to it, or people can correlate the data you're presenting and then visualize it in their head to be able to take future decisions. And finally, can't deny holding data is important, is critical as HR function. We must hold data of our employees and should be able to help take decisions basis that. But all this comes with great responsibility. Your ability to hold data and manage employee privacy is the most critical part in this. And again, we will talk about it as we go forward. But these were six quotes that I thought you all must hear from me instead of knowing me in any other way. Today, get to know me with respect to my relationship with data, and therefore, this is about me. Moving forward, I would love to see some raise of hands. I've just wanted to know your how would you rate your comfort with data, and I will come to it one by one. I clearly see that there are about 118 participants on the Zoom call right now, and that is, I'm assuming, the result I'll be able to see. But just to give a number here, I think almost everybody in this call truly believes that data enables and acknowledges its importance in day to day. And therefore, you've joined this call clearly. So I don't deny that. But the statistics also imply that it's only 40% of us who are comfortable using data in decision making or enabling business, etc. So I thought as we start with my audience here today, let me know How many of us, with a show of hands maybe, and I'll get to see the numbers on the screen, how many of us would rate ourselves low or medium or high while dealing with data? Low means that I'm still building on my skills. And it's great, guys. Just the realization that you want to build your skills is great. But you definitely understand importance of people analytics, KPIs, attrition, voluntary attrition, regrettable attrition. You have fair understanding of it. Medium means you're comfortable with statistical analysis and insights. You understand data governance and AI ML evolution. Nobody is expected to be an expert on these, but fair understanding in your role that you need to play is what I'm curious about. And those who rate themselves high are definitely confident with visualization, with storytelling for key stakeholders. Generally, they are the front runners in managing even this change across the HR team and with the business when it comes to people analytics. So these are three grades I've said. Would love to see a show of hands when we say, I rate myself really high when dealing with data analytics. Anjali, you'll be able to help me with the show of hands?
Yes, everyone, you can just raise your hands if you agree to our speaker tonight.
So if you rate yourself high while dealing with data analytics, please show your hand, raise your hand. So people have mentioned it in the chat, medium, low, medium, low, medium, low. Okay, lot of lows, some mediums, and hardly any high, right? I'm assuming I'm reading it correct because I see it in the chat box here. So it's good to know that at least we are conscious of where we stand. I'm glad that not all of us have rated ourselves high, that I know it and I've arrived. So there is a fair amount of understanding in terms of where you stand. So I will, as we move forward, I will ensure that I talk about low, medium, high, and I will tell you in what context as we move forward. Um, oops, every time I go to the chat, somehow I'm unable to move my slides. Is that common?
Yes, Smriti, but I think that may not cause any issue. You can just open the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen and you can like see, you can share your screen as well there.
Sorry, but I'm not able to move this slide again.
Okay. So can you just reshare your screen then?
I just did that, still not able to.
Okay, I guess. Okay, so are you able to do it now?
Unable to move the slide, Anjali. I'm
Uh,
sorry, guys.
okay. Just a second, Smriti. What you can do is you can share, you can reshare your screen once again. You can just stop your screen and you can reshare the screen and try once.
Mm-hmm. So let me stop share and
Yes,
then
yes.
share again.
Okay. Now can you do it? Okay. Is it good?
No,
Okay, still, just a second. For me, it's working. So, okay, what I can do is, Smriti, you can share,
wait. I'm able to move
okay.
forward. Sorry.
Oh, okay,
Huh.
okay, great.
Cool. Sorry, everyone. So I think kind of took some time there. But coming back, what does the agenda for today look like? I'm going to spend time around why data is important, for which it is important for all of us here on the call to understand how the HR function has evolved over years and how the expectations from HR as a function has evolved over years. And then we will move on to essential data skills. My first two slides, I'll ensure I don't take much time because it's the third part of the presentation that's really critical. But I think it's important because a lot of us rate ourselves low. It is important for us to understand that how data is becoming so critical for our day to day working. For you to enjoy your work with the business, it is important for you to be able to talk in their language. And therefore, the first two sections of our agenda today. And then, of course, the last section is around common pitfalls. We do make mistakes while dealing with data, and that is something we must avoid. Coming to the evolution of HR function, I think a lot of you must not have been born till the second or the third evolution, I'm assuming here. But if you think of it, we all know about industrial era and how in the 60s and the 80s, it was purely personal admin, attendance keeping, just administrating day-to-day work was what was expected from HR. Which is more strategic, which means there are more expectations that are put on the HR function, and that is what further led to the evolution. So when I talk about strategic HR, it means that whatever HR was doing started getting slowly aligned to what was expected from business. We weren't standing in another silo amongst ourselves, right? And then came 2000s, where we started even measuring the impact. That was the early set on of what we call people analytics. And that is why this is where you also see what is underlined there, that the basic HR analytics started coming into play. So you will see that after 2000s, the real evolution of HR happened along with technology, happened along with analytics, happened along with data-based decision making, and of course, the whole workforce ecosystem linkages started building up. So the HR evolution has primarily, you can say, you will give credit to analytics and digital enablement. Now, if you and I are not well versed with all this, whether data or technology or analytics, then are we ensuring that the HR function in our organization evolves, or we are the ones who are hampering HR's visibility in the organization? If we aren't able to talk, if we aren't able to help a business take decisions basis data, but purely, I think that person may leave the organization. Why do you think? Right? It doesn't need a pure gut decision. There are analytics that can tell you what is the probability of that individual leaving, and basis that enable the business make a decision with respect to taking care of that individual, whether it's career growth, whether it's managing the compa, etc. Anything that decision has to be taken can be data based as far as possible. Of course, there has to be technology enabled through it. There has to be data science behind it. But all you have to think at this point in time with this slide is HR as a function is evolving. Are you as individuals evolving along with it? And therefore, your data understanding is stepping up with each passing day, year, month, or are you slowing down your HR function? I think that's the most important question basis this slide. But therefore, anything and everything that I spoke about in the data, you could be the one slowing it down for all you know. If the company's financial performance, if you think of these three boxes that I've created there, whether it's financial performance, operational excellence, or risk mitigation, if HR is led through data, all this gets enabled. A lot of people say financial performance, it's the CFO's job. Financial performance, it's the chief business officer who's to take care of it. No, HR is a cost function for sure, but that means the moment you say cost, it means it is impacting the P&L. The moment you say productivity of an employee, it means it's impacting the P&L of the organization, right? So in various ways, you are as HR function impacting financial performance. But if you don't have data to take care of that, Too bad. So you are the one who could be slowing down the HR function in the organization or enablement of the business in the organization. And similarly, operational excellence, where there's faster decision making, productivity gains, and faster time to competence. And risk mitigation, of course, risk mitigation. For a simplest example on risk mitigation is, you know that through predictive modeling, you know that there's an ex-employee who might leave the organization because he or she is high on potential, high on performance, but is low on compa, and there is high absenteeism. If you put these four together, you know there is a crisis that could come in because he or she is holding a critical role in the organization. You can mitigate this risk if you have thought through your strategy around it and if you can present that data to the business. Moving forward, so it's clear, I think, that we have to figure out who we are in the HR team. Are we the ones who are enabling the HR team and therefore ensuring that we in turn enable business? Or are you the one who's slowing down because of your lack of interest in data or not investing enough time and energy on figuring out data analytics? But having established that, I think it's important to understand. Now, not all of us are data science specialists on the call. We are HR professionals groomed in that way, right? But there are certain data skills that are still critical. You don't need to know SQL, you don't need to know query handling, you don't need to know Python, etc. if you know these data skills. Trust me, for me, it's 20, 21 years of experience. I won't say that I know query writing, etc., or SQL, etc., when it comes to HR. But when I talk about the skills that an HR professional must possess, each of you, as you go along, please do write down these skills and rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. At the end of it, you will know that on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, where do you stand? And therefore, which of these skills needs greater investment at your end? A lot of you rated yourself, for example, low. Maybe you are not low. Maybe you're medium. Maybe you're high. But unless you rate yourself and reflect on these competencies or skills that we are going to talk about today, it's unfair for you to say whether you're low, medium, high. Talking about these data skills, I have, basis my experience over years, positioned them into three different buckets, starting with foundational skills. As and when you start your career in HR, these are skills that become very critical for you to know. It could be as simple as managing your HRIS, data collection, reporting, KPIs, etc. As you grow senior, start hitting mid management, etc., that is where your intermediate skills come into play. Statistical analysis, forecasting, data ethics come into play. And finally, I talk about the advanced skills. As you get into leadership roles, are you able to frame the business problem into an HR problem? Are you able to visualize data and tell a story that convinces business leaders in the room to say, oh, you made sense, and therefore this decision must be taken? Now, this is how I'm going to talk about in the next few slides. And this, I personally feel, is the most critical section of skills. And this is where, as I talk about foundational, intermediate, and advanced skills, I encourage you. In total, there are going to be about 8 skills I will talk about, two in foundational, three in intermediate, and three in advanced. On these 8 skills, please do rate yourself. I would say rather rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5 or 10 and write your self out there in terms of how you're rating yourself and which is the skill you've rated yourself low on. And is there merit in making some investments in there? Talking about foundational data skills, I will talk about skill and skill indicators and what is it that you must know and must build on for you to do a good job of it. The first time basic skill any HR professional who's starting out his career or journey must know is data collection and management. We spoke about garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know where your data is coming from, where it is getting stored, and how it can be pulled out or extracted, there is going to be errors from here on, from the starting point, right? So you would have implemented some HRIS in the organization. Now somebody may have Workday, somebody may have Oracle, somebody may have ADP, doesn't matter. But that is what we call our single source of truth. I remember when I started out with my career, there were Excel sheets getting managed. One HR counterpart will show me some data, the other may show me another data. That for sure is not a single source of truth. The moment you start relying on HRI systems, and for all you know, smaller organizations may not have the budgets to invest in HRI systems, even if you're running with Excel sheets. I think the most important bit is that the single source of truth? Or there are five different Excel sheets lying with five different people. Or even when you're on HRI system, the admin rights are with five different people. They can make changes as and when they want. No, not acceptable. You should clearly know your single source of truth is that system or that Excel sheet. This is where you will extract data from, and all metrics and all KPIs will be based on this data. Now, when I talk about metrics, of course, your HRIS or your Excel sheet must capture all critical information about a new employee or about an employee in progress, which employee serving in your organization. Now, of course, the obvious is date of joining, date of some of these things that we, their employee code, their name, their work history, etc. I think what sometimes doesn't get captured is the performance of the employee, potential of the employee. The organizations, I'm assuming, have moved beyond performance, which is this year data, to potential, which means last 3 years. How what you assume is the future potential of the employee. The moment you start capturing all relevant information about an employee's life cycle in the organization, you are able to, after that, you're able to build more meaningful KPIs and therefore deliver analytics and insights to your business leaders. So, very critical for you to ensure that the right data points are there and collection protocols. I talked about single source of truth, how many people have access to the same data, how many are admins. Can you ensure single source of truth? Can you ensure the protocol, whether the data will be collected at the application stage or joining date? If there is change, will it be self-service? So, for example, before joining the organization, I was bachelor's. After completing about 2 years in the organization, I've gained my master's. So my educational qualification must be updated in the system. Now, is it a self-service, which means me as an employee needs to upload my certificate and then update the system? Or is there a shared services that has been set up in the organization that will take care of the back end operations? Or it is the HR business partner. All those protocols must be clearly called out. And the data needs to be cleaned on a monthly basis or a quarterly basis. Now, this is the basic, this is foundational skill, and especially people starting out in their careers must own this up. Moving on to the second skill, I talk about data literacy and reporting. Now, are you able to interpret the data in front of you? Can you question, communicate with data? Do you know how to put together certain dashboards, reports, etc.? Can you think of KPIs that are critical depending upon the stage of your organization? Can you pull together some surveys and feedback forms, etc.? Now, these are questions you need to ask yourself. Of course, for this, there are various tools available in the market. Like we spoke about the tools when it comes to HRIS, when you talk about reporting, there are tools, something as basic as Excel sheets. I'm Google Sheets, Excel sheets. I'm assuming all of us use that. But then, of course, there's Power BI, there's Tableau, there's Visio. All these tools are available in the market. Of course, Visio is very HR specific as a tool. However, the other two, the Power BI, I think is Microsoft, and Tableau is by Salesforce. And these are tools that are more general in nature. They are not HR specific, and therefore the dashboards, etc., have to be built for HR. And of course, these two tools, I would say, are more, they need more customization, and you will need a data scientist along with you as you work on these. But if you were to go with Vizier, etc., then these are more customized to HR, and therefore, in terms of technical skills, you won't need technical skills for dealing with it because there are dashboards that are pre-built. So it's more like plug and play with this, right? Now, these are tools available in the market, but these tools are only relevant if you understand what are the KPIs that are relevant at this point in time for your organization. You could be an organization as big as 50,000 employees, you can be as small as 50 employees, you could be a startup, you could be a very mature organization, depends upon the stage, right? A mature organization will have enough data points to ensure that you can map the employee life cycle. And therefore, your analytics could be a lot more deeper, and your insights could also rely on the past. And therefore, predictive analytics becomes easier. However, if you're a young organization of 50 employees, then your KPIs may look very different from a more mature organization. Then your understanding around attrition, whether it's a good attrition or a bad attrition, voluntary attrition or non-voluntary attrition, I think you may be around that piece at this point in time, right? So it's important. And give yourself a try. Try putting together surveys from an employee point of view. When I say 30, 60, 90 new hire survey, it's been 30 days in the organization, how comfortable I feel. It's been 60 days in the organization, how comfortable I feel. The first 30 days, you're only talking basics. Think from an employee perspective who's just joined your organization. First 30 days, he or she's only looking at basics. Do I have a lunch partner? Did I get my laptop on time? Do I have an access card? The moment you move to 60 days, the person wants to get into the thick of his or her role. Do I understand my role? Do I understand how my role contributes to the organization? But the moment it is 90 days, have I got into one on ones with my manager on a monthly basis? Have my objectives and goals been called out? So it's not too much, or it's not a rocket science to be able to build surveys. It's just about making intentional you and put yourself as an employee. The good news is, in this case, you are the employee, you are the HR. Can you build these surveys with the assumption that you are that employee who's filling this survey? What is your expectation on various days? So, when I say data literacy and reporting as a critical skill in the foundational data skills, it is about being able to use, or it's primarily knowing, let's say, your KPIs, ability to pull together surveys, knowing the key data points that are critical depending upon the stage of the organization. So, that to me, these are two skills. I gave you 2 minutes. Why don't you rate yourself on both these skills, data collection and management, on a scale of 1 to 5? How do you rate yourself? And data literacy and reporting, how do you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 5? You might share it in chat, or you might just write it down in your diary for you to evaluate yourself later and say, this is where I need to make my investment. Especially those who rated themselves low. Just rate yourself. Are you 3, 4, or are you 2? It is okay wherever you are. It's just knowing which is important at this point in time. It's wonderful. Somebody's even rated, I think Vanda has rated herself 6. There are, of course, 3s and 2s, and like I said, it's perfect. 4 on 5 for both the skills. 4 and 2. Oh, 10 on 10. John. Saloni is collection, 4. Literacy. Arpita is 2. 3 for both. So I see you, I hear you. Stephen is 2 for both. Maitri is 4 for both. 8 on 10 for John. Got it. I hear you. The good thing is you are aware where you stand, right? Now that you're aware, you also therefore know that to be strong foundationally, you need to invest there, right? From there, I move on to intermediate data skills. Now it gets a little next level, of course. I talk about statistical analysis and forecasting, right? Do you understand descriptive statistics? Do you know when to use regression, when to use correlation? Do you know the difference between correlation and causation? Do you know confidence intervals? Can you forecast to predict outcomes, mean, median, mode? From something as basic as that to regression and to confidence intervals, etc. Are you confident with it? Of course, Power BI, etc., will have it inbuilt for you also. You just have to sit with your data science guy to be able to do it, right? That kind of investment, of course, you will have to make. I think after we do our MBAs, we tend to forget about statistics and how relevant it is for all of us. The important part is knowing these tools is one thing, how to apply them. Time series. So if you see on the extreme right, I see written analysis types, right? Time series analysis for attrition trends. Think of it, if you are, let's say, a 5-year-old organization. From year one to two to three, can you do a time series to say, year on year for the last 4 years, I have seen that my attrition trend has upped by 2%. However, suddenly last year, my attrition has gone over the roof and increased by 5%. I'm just stating a data point basis this time series analysis, right? Now, the important point is to dive deeper into that data. The great news is you have the data because you're a pro. When you rate yourself on the third skill, I'm assuming everybody rates 5 on 5, right? If you've done that, the important part then is forecasting. If the first 4 years was 2%, this year was 5%, assuming you know the reasons for it. Let's say there's a new competitor that came into the market and he or she, that competition organization started taking your top talent or best of the talent from you because that was prepared talent. How do you go about figuring out trends for the future? Regression models for attrition prediction. This is so the time series and regression will go hand in hand. Clustering techniques for employee segmentation. Now, employee segmentation, you and I know it could be done in various ways, whether you talk about performers, whether you talk about high potential, whether you talk about those about to exit, where you can predict that they're about to exit, or those who have undertaken, let's say, 8 man days of training. Now, there could be various ways in which you segment your employees. Now, depending upon that, if you've taken 8 man days of training, the correlation one would want to build is this the employee who's ready for the next level promotion? Because he or she has groomed himself or herself so much that I need to figure out, is the employee ready for the next level promotion? And of course, risk modeling for cluster behavior prediction. Now, most commonly, of course, risk modeling, individual level attrition analysis. This is what it will be used for, right? So, this is critical because this is where actual long term analysis and correlations come into play. Will this lead to that? Right, that kind of correlations come into play, and very important for you to be able to use 2 or 3 variables together. Two is of course the minimum, but 3 or 4 variables to be able to draw conclusions. Coming to the fourth data skill, when we talk about intermediate data skill, data privacy and ethics. I think this is where there is a lot of struggle that has happened over years. Can't deny that. There's too much data leakage within organizations. What gets caught broadly is business related, but I would not deny that in my 20 years, I've really seen employee data leakages as well, where we might have um, not managed the employee privacy well. Now, let's talk about it. Data privacy and ethics. I've kind of talked about it in 3 different buckets: awareness, responsibility, and security. Awareness. Do we understand what we need to know? We all know GDPR, we all know CCPA, we've heard of this. Have we been trained on that? Becomes critical. Responsibility, managing data subject access requests. Now, like I spoke about in the beginning, there are 3 or 4 people who have admin rights. Every business HRBP has rights to data. Do I need to give all the rights to all employees? If I'm an HR business partner only for the finance team, definitely need to have access to that data. Do I need access to the entire organization? When it comes to my leadership, does everybody in the organization need, everybody in the HR organization need access to that data? Or is it just my HR leader who needs access to that data? Right? So some of these principles need to be clearly called out to manage privacy and to ensure that the sensitive information doesn't get leaked out. And of course, the third is security. Anonymization techniques. We all know that your Aadhaar card, any of your personal documents needs to be anonymized. I cannot know your PIN numbers, right? So, what needs to be your security code, etc.? What needs to be, how do I go about anonymizing? I know that the world hasn't moved forward. As HR, I can tell you, I've struggled with anonymization. There are not great softwares available out there, but yes, we make do in different ways, therefore. The consent management processes. If I'm going to share your background verification check, right? Does your employee know what all do you share with the third party when he or she is getting hired by somebody? You need to take consent of your employee depending upon what you're sharing. Sharing protocols, creating compliant data retention policies. When do you need to purge your data? All this is very important at an intermediate level. I've not called it foundational because somebody in the senior levels or mid management levels needs to take accountability and ownership of it. It just cannot be at the top, sitting at the top, right? Now, if you see on the right, of course, I'm talking about who do they apply to, types of data you need to protect, right? Of course, is salary or compensation as sensitive as your employee code, right? Now, data collection, sale and processing, consent to share data, revoke data from being processed, penalties for non-compliance. There are huge penalties across countries. We all know it is not specific to any country. There are penalties for non-compliance. There are statutory requirements. There are compliance and regulatory requirements. We must all comply with that. And the fifth skill that I talk about here, and these are buzzwords today, is AI and ML. Identify appropriate. I'm not saying that you need to be the person sitting behind and coding. What you need to know is what are the appropriate use cases you need to build where you can use AI. How can you reduce manual work within your HR team to be able to use AI? Leaders, a lot of times in meeting rooms, I've heard leaders say, why don't we use AI? Which means that I'm not aware in what scenarios one can use AI or ML. It is important as I grow that I'm able to give that guidance to my team that why don't you figure out a way where machine learning can ensure better results rather than making one person sit, learn from the past data and then deliver what is the probable outcome. It is important that machine learning gives you some outcome. So as an HR professional who's not a data expert or let's say data science expert, it is important for you to understand use cases, and it is important for you to understand where does it need my oversight? Are there biases possible because of use of AI? How do I ensure I remove all biases? How do I ensure that at the fifth step, there's a human who is needed to manage this process? After the fifth step, the sixth step is managed to remove biases, let's say, and then I hand over to the machine again, right? Now, of course, because I said typical use cases that, let's say, some of us may have used so far when it comes to AI and ML is how do you build classification models for talent identification? NLP for sentiment analysis. I'm sure all of you are using engagement surveys and the comments that employees leave. How do you use NLP for sentiment analysis? Is the general sentiment in the organization high, medium, low, happy, sad, engaged, disengaged? All that depending upon the tone used and depending upon yes no answers given, there is an NLP that gets done, and therefore the sentiment analysis comes about. Recommendation systems for mentors. Now, for example, if I'm a high attrition risk, looking at my profile, can there be a recommendation for a great mentor for me who could ensure longevity of my tenure in the organization? And pattern recognition for identifying successful career paths. All of us, by gut, generally tend to say that a great CEO generally comes from a lineage where he or she has, let's say, done sales and marketing, both kind of roles. I come from an FMCG at some point in time, and it's a known thing there. Now, for the more emerging industries, is there a pattern recognition possible? I've done fintech. Who makes a great fintech CEO? Can we look at patterns across and then say this is what could happen? Right, so successful career paths, it is no more linear. That if Smriti, which is me in this case, was a talent acquisition person at a point in talent acquisition, or a recruiter at a point in time, she will in her career of course make a successful talent acquisition head. Career paths are not that linear anymore. So when you look at pattern recognition, these are various skills Smriti has captured over these years of her career. Generally, people with these skills could also make a great HR head. That is what pattern recognition does. And these are certain use cases. I would love for you guys to interact with whatever AI you use and try figuring out these use cases, and maybe possible apply for in your organization. But yes, do take care of data privacy and manage the sensitive information as you use this data, or just create data to try these out. Now, again, we take 2, 3 minutes, go back on the chat, and rate ourselves against the skill 3, 4, 5, which is statistical analysis. And on a scale of 1 to 5, where do you rate yourself on statistical analysis and forecasting? Where do you rate yourself on data privacy and ethics? And where do you rate yourself on identifying AI and ML use cases? I see a lot of twos, threes, 3, 4, 3, Mayuri, 3, 2, 1, Arpita, 1, 3, 2, April, 2 generally, I think generically by Metri across. Rekha is 3, 2, 1. Ankit is 4, 4, 2. I do see a 4 here. Two, 3, 2. Yes, you will. I'm happy to share the slides, guys. Somebody has asked if I missed the name somehow. It just ran, my slides ran. Somebody's asked if I would be comfortable sharing the slides. I leave it with Anjali and Sarah to decide. I'm more than happy to share the slides. Honestly, while preparing for these slides for you guys, I've also learned in the process a lot. And I think we'll learn together through your questions also. I do see 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1. 3, 3, 3. Shaheen says slides would be great. Adonis says I'll be grateful to receive the slides. So yes, would be more than happy. Anjali, over to you to please decide if you're comfortable sharing the slides.
Yes,
But coming
absolutely.
back, wonderful. Thanks, Anjali. So coming back to our presentation and how you guys have rated, clearly there is need. When we talk about intermediate skills, there are a lot of 3, 2, 1s, 1, 2, 3s, etc. that we are talking about. So I again encourage you guys to invest in yourselves as we think about it. I move to the last section, which is of the skills, which is the expert data skills. Now, this is where the assumption is you know the foundational skills, you know the intermediate skills. Now we are coming to expert data skills. As you grow senior, you will also realize that foundational, the HR ops team will handle for you. The intermediate, a lot of times the people analytics team, if you're a large organization, or rewards team, or again, people ops teams, or in some cases, business partnering teams will handle for you. But the expert data skills, assuming you're the senior most person in the HR team, or you are the direct reports of the CHRO, you cannot run away from these. This is what you must know. The first I talk about is business problem solving. Now, HR, of course, solves for HR problems, but those HR problems arise because of some problem that's happening in the business. Are you able to join the dots? Is what is important for us to know. Which means, are you able to translate your business challenge into data questions? Are you able to define the hypothesis, test it, etc.? I think that will get taken care of in your statistical analysis, etc. But the most important question I ask here is, are you able to frame the business problem and convert it into a HR problem? The simplest example I've given on the right, and I will talk about a framework that I generally use as we talk about this. Let's say Malaysia as a country has a red P&L this year. What you as HR needs to dive deeper into. Was there any external factor that led to it? That means maybe some government regulation came about because of which Malaysia business didn't do well, or there was a new competitor that came into play because of which the Malaysia business didn't do well. If those external factors are ruled out, and the new challenger business coming in the market could also lead to an HR problem, which means that your talent is getting poached by a competitor. Are you ready with your pipeline in that case? Or the other questions to ask is, was the leader tuned into the region and delivering? Now, the leader that you've put for Malaysia business, how's he rated in the scheme of things? Was the leader empowered with appropriate headcount covering the region? That comes to um, the productivity, right? Maybe that region needed 10 sales guys and you've only given five. You should figure out the productivity. How large is the region? How many sales guys would enable that region? And was there too much absenteeism or, some government strikes and holiday season? You don't know. You need to start seeing the red P&L, which is a business problem. Start thinking of it in a manner which is more relevant as you think of your HR function. I told you guys that I'll talk about a framework. What you see here is business problem framing framework, right? Now, what starts, I'm assuming all of you can see this slide, which talks about business HR framework. What I do is I first look at business outcomes. Where is my business struggling? Generally, business outcomes will talk about financial health, customer satisfaction, what is your return to shareholders. Now, financial health could mean revenue, could mean EBITDA, could mean a lot of things. But what you see here is I've done color coded financial health because that's the example I'm carrying forward as I talk about this framework with all of you. From business outcome, I convert that into business KPIs. If my financial health was a problem this year for my CEO, which KPI was my CEO struggling with? Was it revenue growth? Was it EBITDA or PAT? Was it net promoter score, employee engagement, audit score, or innovation? There are thousands of KPIs that a CEO works with. I've just nailed down five or six that are the most critical for any organization. And I have assumed that revenue growth was a struggle for my CEO when he or she looks at the P&L this year. So I have converted a problem statement, which was business outcome, into the suffering of the KPI. This business KPI, I then start looking at with respect to HR capabilities, the workforce capabilities. Now, that could be a performance management issue, it could be a leadership capability issue, talent management, and others stated here. I have made the assumption right now, for the sake of this example, for you to understand the framework, that the revenue growth struggled because of performance management. Now, that is the workforce capability we are talking about. I have converted performance management into people KPIs. What is it that I, as HR head or HR function, accountable for? I'm responsible if performance management is an issue in my organization or in, let's say, the sales organization. I'm assuming that revenue growth was the responsibility of the sales team, where I see a performance gap. And that gap is the reason behind that gap is employee productivity. And that productivity is coming from where? Insights that I've brought about on the table is my per employee sales dipped from 5,000 Singapore dollars. I'm based out of Singapore, so I've taken that currency to 4,000 Singapore dollars. My sales absenteeism increased from 1 to 1.25 man days. My per hour market presence. My sales guys should be in the market basis the app that they carry, the Salesforce app or whatever app they carry. They should be in the market for 6 hours. But this year I saw that they were there only for 5.5 hours. And role duplication is there in 20% geographies. The same region is assigned to two different people. If employees are not clear about the goals or the KPIs assigned to them, of course, there's going to be a struggle and there's going to be an impact on employee productivity. And finally, employee attrition has increased by 5%. Now, I've called it insights. It's actually pure data that I've again served from people KPIs. I move on to people analytics. And from all this, I will draw insights. So why is everything kind of dipping at this point in time? And that is when I realized maybe the leader of that region is not fully invested. Maybe there's a new competitor that has come into the market. Maybe all I have is, let's say, gig workers, and the competition is offering full time jobs to sales employees at this point in time. So, all those insights will be drawn out of these people analytics that you start seeing. So that's why, if you're a senior leader in the organization, it is very important for you to be able to convert your business outcomes into people level insights. And that's the general framework. This is how my mind works. The moment I see a business problem, I start looking at how do I convert it into or bring insights around people into this so that in that room where business is discussed, HR enjoys a place on the table. Having talked about business problem framing, I talk about data visualization and storytelling. Again, very critical. You can have a red P&L, and people will continue to talk about maybe new products needed to be launched. Maybe the competitor, invested a lot of money in marketing this time. But your story around people will only be heard if you have a way of telling a story, right? So you have to use the right visualization. You have to communicate your technical findings. For you as HR professional, those are your technical findings. How do you convert them into non-technical for the non-technical audience, right? And therefore, when you talk about data visualization, there are various ways. Now, are you going to show a relationship, comparison, distribution, or composition? Are there two variables or three variables? Will you use a scatter plot or will you use a bar histogram? Like I said, I will share this slide. Important for you to know that wherever you're using a bar, not necessarily that's the same place just for your slide to look nice, the scatter plot will make more sense. Not necessary. You should know what data you're trying to communicate and what's the best way of communicating that data. Will pie chart make more sense? If there's one critical element that's, you're talking about, let's say, um, uh, what's the source of hiring? And let's say majority of hiring is happening through referrals, which could be a concern because you're building clones within the organization through referrals. I'm making all these assumptions as I talk. Maybe pie chart is the best because you're showing that out of 100%, 80% is done through referrals and another 2%, 5% through other sources. Now, this is a cause of concern that 80% of hiring is happening through referrals. So you might want to use a pie chart. So make these choices to have the maximum impact on the audience that you are dealing with. Now, having spoken about business problem framing, data visualization, and storytelling, the last thing a senior leader needs to do is change management and adoption. You could talk data, but business refuses to look at data. The change management hasn't happened in the room there. You have to build data literacy not just within the HR teams, but with the business as well. So you need to ensure your business is comfortable when you talk data and is very comfortable making data based decisions. So these are again the next three skills at expert level that all of us must possess. And I'll be glad to see your ratings. So we go back to the chat box and rate ourselves against these three and talk about where we see ourselves. Introspect and mention our individual ratings around this. Shaheen Ahmed. Oh, I see a lot of ones here. Wonderful, guys. You know what impresses me is that none of you is shy of calling it out. If you rate yourself one or two, you rate yourself one or two because, if you have to start changing this, you have to start investing. You first need to know where you stand and then you start working on it. So they're primarily ones, threes. I see Ahmed laughing it out, saying, frankly speaking, grading myself one is a great self compliment. Interesting. Oh, Antonia has rated five on business problem framing. Amazing. And Megha is 231, but Sheikh has rated five on data visualization and storytelling. That's quite tough. Trust me, Sheikh. If you're rating yourself five on it, it's amazing. Wonderful, guys. I see some increase in the scores as more people write about it. But yes, I did see a lot of ones and twos. Like I said, knowing is important, and from there on starts improvement. We're already over the time, so I will move on to the next slide, which is my last slide, which is common pitfalls. I'll quickly talk about these. Ignoring gut and experience. You know what I generally do? I, of course, use data to guide, but while I rely on data to guide me because I'm a big promoter of that, I use gut to challenge. And then I need a conversation with my team member to confirm. So, of course, I need data, I need gut, and I need a conversation to reach my final decision. So, I encourage all of you to talk about gut and experiences and not just purely rely on data. Because data, when you talk about big numbers and 50,000 employees, etc., of course, you cannot look at individual data points. But when you talk about taking a career decision for a single individual, now, you could say the person's performance is amazing. The person has done X number of trainings, has, really delivered on one critical project. But your gut says that every time you see that individual in a meeting room, your experience tells you that his or her leadership presence is not felt. He or she is very shy of telling his or her side of the story. Now, that is where, when you're promoting somebody to a leadership level and you purely rely on performance ratings and data points, that's not great. You need to bring in your gut and your experience of dealing with that employee in the room, talk about it, and maybe you say, let's give him or her this feedback, put that person on a storytelling workshop, and in 6 months, rediscuss this case. That is where gut experience really comes into play. When you're talking about attrition analysis, your gut says generally around appraisal time, after appraisal, when the bonuses are rolled out, attrition is bound to go up. That's what your gut says. Maybe all other organizations in the market, they change their appraisal cycle. So your gut will tell you whether to build a pipeline for future talent or not, depending upon what is your experience of other organizations and your gut saying basis past experience, right? Sampling bias, are you picking up the right sample data when you're making analysis? I'm assuming everybody knows about it. If you're looking at top talent but not the basic example just for you to correlate, you're talking about top talent, but you're looking at top performers data. So there is a sampling bias, right? And a lot of organizations do use these two terms synonymously, which is not right. Data quality, have talked about enough, and your foundational spoke about data quality, and I've said it quite a few times during my presentation. Garbage in, garbage out. So please ensure that your data is updated and build on that foundational skill. The most interesting for me is correlation versus causation. Lot of us, when we see a correlation between those two data points, start believing that one led to the other. And the most interesting example I give to my team to help them understand correlation and causation is something like this. Um, the number of people going to the moon is increasing. The number of people eating chicken is increasing. The number of people eating chicken who are going to the moon is increasing. Is that possible to build that correlation leading to a causation, that the number of people who are going to the moon, that means everybody who's eating chicken has the probability of going to the moon. So these are, I've given the example of the two most unrelated data points, but the important part for you to understand is there could be a correlation. There could be a correlation that I have a, let's say I didn't get the right salary increase. My salary increase was low. So you may see in your data that if the salary increase is low, that means attrition will be high. It's a fair correlation. But is that the cause of attrition? It could be a poor manager. It could be disengagement due to the quality of work assigned to me. You'll have to go deeper. But a lot of times you will see business saying, oh, we gave him less increments, therefore he's decided to move on. He's assumed that this correlation is the obvious causation. Please do not. Ensure you have enough data points to bring about causation and the correlation is not obvious causation. And finally, confirmation bias. I already know that people leave because of low increments. I ensure that the data proves it. No. We all know, all studies say people leave poor managers. And therefore, you need to dive deeper for the engagement scores, percentage increments assigned, and look at 4 or 5 data points to really figure out causation. And it may not just be one data point leading to it.